Welcome back to Guff Stuff Weekly Podcast. I'm Javen.
And I'm Guff.
Today we're going to be talking about something very near and dear to my heart. In fact, it's the reason why we play video games. It's that sweet dopamine fix. That beautiful, beautiful serenade of blights and numbers and flashing and more. Tetris.
Tetris.
Well, not exactly Tetris, but Tetris is going to be my example.
Okay.
So, I want to talk today about gameplay loops. What brings us coming back to a game and playing a game?
Okay.
The driving factor of the, I have to do this again.
Right.
Tetris, you move some blocks around and you clear a line of blocks.
Right.
You get numbers on a board, and when the blocks get all the way to the top, you lose the game.
Yes.
So the gameplay loop, in essence, is clear blocks until you get the highest score as possible.
Right. Until you can't do it because it's too fast and too insane.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Because it gets more difficult or whatever.
Yep.
So the incentive is to get better at the game and get a higher score. That's the whole loop.
Right.
Gameplay loops get a little bit more complicated when you get into games like, let's say, Fallout.
Yep.
Because now your gameplay loop is, okay, I need bullets.
Endless bullets, endless gear, endless...
Better score.
Right. Yep. Almost endless quests.
Yeah, endless quests. Okay, so actually, I want to backtrack a little bit.
Yep.
Before we get into a huge open-ended game, I want to build up a little bit. So Super Mario. So
Okay.
we're going to do this chronologically.
Yep.
I jumped the gun there. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So Super Mario, your incentive for the gameplay loop was to finish the game.
Yeah. Well, you finish each levels, in the game, essentially.
Now, what's the incentive to play it again?
See how fast you can do it.
Or how high a score you can get on a level.
Yep.
Or to have as few hits on you as possible.
Right.
And that developed a whole branch of gaming that we know now as speedrunning or challenge running.
Yes. Horrible, by the way.
I think it's cool.
I mean, it's cool, but it I don't know. Anyway,
Certain games
that's
have
a whole other
certain
podcast.
games have their likeness about it.
Right. Well, they develop games specifically for that now, but I've always wondered why buy a $60. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter what the price is. Even back then, it was still probably $30. Why buy a $30 to $70 to $90, $100 game? Just see how fast you can beat it. Like, I want my. You are that way too. You look at the value of a game. Can I get out of a $30 game? Can I get $30 worth of playtime?
Yeah.
So $1 an hour, right?
That's my usual.
Yeah. Speedrun games. I see that with like expansions to MMOs and stuff. I know we're getting off the loop. People buying these games. Oh, it's a $40 expansion, then they're done with it overnight. Well, it's because you didn't sleep in 48 hours.
So let's talk a little bit more about the evolution.
Yep.
So the evolution goes forward, and then we get. I feel like our next step after the arcade games. We got Mario Brothers, Tetris, Dig Dug. They're all similar in the idea that you're trying to achieve a higher score, a better runtime, a more flawless playthrough.
Right.
Now we can get into something that is a little more interesting. Legend of Zelda.
Fair enough.
There's a story there. I'm going to use A Link to the Past as the benchmark for this.
Okay.
There's a lot you can do. There's a lot you don't have to do. Now we introduce optional things. Mario, you had to skip jumps, whatever, all that.
Right.
But it's still essentially part of the game.
Right.
Whereas in Zelda, you don't need to get certain items. You don't need to get the fourth bottle or the third bottle. You don't need to get certain things. You can beat the game without them. So now you introduce this new part to the gameplay loop of acquiring more materials, better gear, having a more finished character and a more finished story.
Right.
So now we introduce this concept of... Do you have a favorite book?
I have I like all books that I read. Look, what do you mean?
Have you had a book that you've read multiple times?
Yes, I have. I've read. Yes.
Okay. What made you want to read that book again?
It's because the story was good. You go back, you read the story, you relive the moments that they were in the story.
That's a completely different motive than getting a better score or a better...
Right.
So the idea of games with story in them and narratives in them having this replay value because you enjoyed the story.
Right.
That in itself, the story, is part of a gameplay loop.
Right. That's true.
It's another method, another function.
Right, another function to keep you hooked to that game.
My next step is to go to a game, and I'm kind of comparing two games that are somewhat similar in gameplay loop sense.
Okay.
I'd like to compare Destiny 2, or Destiny.
Right.
And World of Warcraft.
Okay.
And Monster Hunter. Now, the gameplay loop for these games is a little interesting.
Yep.
Because the first X amount of hours has its story, has its fun moments, has that gameplay loop, has faster times, more successful, whatever. But then you get into something called endgames. And endgame gameplay loops. And MMOs and Monster Hunter and Destiny are... and Diablo, Path of Exile, are all really good examples of this in that the gameplay loop is different for endgame.
Right.
And the fact that now you're doing raids, you're fighting bosses, you're grinding gear, but you have to achieve this original gameplay loop to unlock
the new gameplay.
The new gameplay loop.
Gotcha.
So it's now multiple gameplay loops within these games.
Right. They're getting bigger and more complicated, so they have to add more stuff.
Yeah, and you can always do your endgame content, but you might want to make a new character and go through the original stuff again. There's crazy people that do it.
Oh, no, I know. I've been there, done that.
And the cool thing is, you can still do speed running. You can still do... It's...
Right.
The gameplay loop ultimately... What I'm trying to get at with this point is the gameplay loop is ultimately decided by what you want out of the game.
Right.
So you can take any game and get your $1 an hour out of it, so long as you have the right mindset of what you want out of the game. You know, it's that idea that we talked about a long time ago of injecting fresh ideas into old games, of trying to play them in certain ways, placing limitations on yourself, imposing a reason for a loop.
Right.
So I guess let's make my explanation of the gameplay loops. So what I'd like to talk about now is, like, what are some of your favorite gameplay loops? Like, what are some that, like, get you kind of going? I didn't talk about the survival.
Right.
I kind of left that for you.
Yeah, no, that's probably some of my favorite gameplay loops are. They're loops, but they're like, there's really no beginning or end. In fact, my first MMO I played, I think that's probably what got me into the survival genre, as it turns out. I played a game called Ultima Online, and there was no quest line in it, that MMO. It was basically, here's a world, have fun.
Oh, pure open... Yeah, an open world is like...
Right.
The oddball, the kind of the apex of the gameplay loop, because the open world is the ultimate gameplay loop because it's what you impose on yourself.
Yeah.
It's your own motivation.
One character was just a pure miner crafter. That's all he did. And so he would go from... And the funny part about that kind of gameplay, which is why I like it, is, and it goes right to Ark and all these other ones too, Conan, is you could be walking through the woods or the desert or whatever game you're playing, and there is no set zones.
Right, so there's no, like, level cap.
Right, there's no level cap, so you could literally be mining the rare ore in the middle of a nice field with horses, and then 20 steps later, you're surrounded by liches in a cave.
You know, a good game... I think it's a good game by design for that open world survival crafting. It's probably the reason why I don't play a lot of games like that, because I played the shit ton out of this one. RuneScape.
Oh, yeah. I played a little RuneScape, but by then I was already playing a lot of Ultima Online. I was already in that.
But it's that idea that a level 3 combat character can go in and where there's hell demons running around, mine runite ore because he has a 99 mining.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of there's so many like your gameplay loops in those kind of games that it all depends on what the game developers want to put in there. You can have 20 different loops in one game.
Well, and
you can only play one of them if that's all you like to do.
And that's the idea of, like, Stardew Valley.
Love that game.
Great game.
Very good. Yeah.
That's an interesting game because they have arcade games within that game.
I know. Yeah. They have mini games.
the basic mini game.
Yeah.
Which is its own contained loop
Yep.
that you can get your satisfaction out of within a game.
Yep. Yeah. If you're like, well, I'm tired of fishing and mining, I'm just gonna go play the mini arcade.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a great. The game developers, I think indie gamers are very good at this, developing those little loops that you don't even really notice are in there until you've already been sucked in by them, and you're like, oh, they did it. Damn them. Stardew Valley is a very good one.
Another gameplay loop I like is I talk a lot about this game too, Dota.
Yep.
MOBAs in general. I like the idea of self-contained matches.
Yep.
That you can. There's an infinite possibility of how they can pan out.
Right.
And your loop essentially is getting better at the game. Your ultimate
right
reward is not
dying
a high score
constantly.
or anything like that. It's getting better at playing the next match.
Right, and being
and
good
I
at
find
your
that
character.
very addictive.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. I can tell you that would have been a very good game for me 20 plus years ago. I probably would have played the crap out of those games.
And you played on a similar one to the RTSs because they're very similar in what they
But now it's
the sense of the brain.
I know that just I'm a little bit older, but I do know that my limitations are a little different than they were back then.
Yeah.
I don't have as much twitch ability, and I don't know. I don't know if it's I've just trained myself not to remember everything about every game I ever played now. But I remember, when I first played these games back in the day, I'd remember every nook, corner, cranny, every flower, whatever. But now it's like I just don't put that much thought into lots of these games. I'm more of a casual gamer now.
Well, you've invested you found the loops that you like,
right,
and you've invested in those.
Fair enough, yeah. So I would like those games, but one, you need a group of people to play with that are willing to put up with old people until old people figure it out. Two, it's I mean, how many thousands of hours do you have in those games?
A lot.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I have my survival games. For someone to come from a sports game to a survival game, it would be a horrible nightmare for them. They would just be frustrated because they die 50 times in the first 10 minutes and never want to play again.
All right, so let's get a little meta here.
Uh-oh.
So,
meta.
Yeah.
Like Facebook meta?
No.
Oh.
I'm talking like real life meta.
Oh, here we go.
So let's talk about things that we do, and I'll try to keep it contained within gaming.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is kind of a philosophical episode in a way.
Nice.
I
like philosophy.
Of trying to get what you want out of something.
Yep.
Board games are another great example of things that have gameplay loops.
Yep.
And usually the loop involves who's the winner. That's the ultimate end goal.
Yep.
Monopoly, stuff like that. The one that's really interesting to me and that has the biggest philosophical implications is tabletop role playing.
Right.
Because the gameplay loop in tabletop role playing is you're going for storyline, which is a very well established gameplay loop.
Right.
But you can't go back and replay it.
No. Once you're right. You're pretty much your decisions are done. That's it.
And so you're there is no loop because you can't go back.
Right.
The loop you get is the social interaction and the laughing and fun that you have from each session.
Right.
Your loop is contained. It's a loop that is shared between
the people
at the table.
Yeah.
So it's a social thing.
Yeah.
So when you go into a tabletop role playing game, you're not going into it to. I mean, some people might be. Some people might be going into it to roll dice and kill monsters. But ultimately, if you're playing a tabletop role playing game, the main reward is the social interaction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Get away from your regular routine. Do something that's not norm. Mm-hmm. That's why I do it. I don't know if I'd role play if it was just for pure entertainment value. It's for that. I mean, it is pure entertainment value for me, but it's also a break from other things that I have to think about.
It's a different kind of entertainment value.
Yeah, right.
Because it's not the mind numbing of a video game loop.
Right. Or brainlessness of watching movies over and over.
Hearing a story over and over again.
Watching all the,
it's
Marvel MCU stuff in a period of a week.
Yeah. But it's that idea of that It's a social loop.
Yeah, it's definitely a social loop, but I'm not a very social person, so.
And
like
some people might get more out of it than others, too.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine.
It's a really good way. I think that it's a very good way for... I don't know. I think it should be... This is one of those things that are kind of a touchy subject, at least a dear subject to my heart. I think role-playing games should almost be required curriculum in schools to some extent. Whether it's used for teaching math, whether it's used for teaching history, it doesn't make any difference. I think there should be some level, because it takes people, and I've seen it for many years I've been playing, since I've been 10, and I'm almost 50, and I've seen it just in the store for the 10 years I've done the store. People who are completely introverted, can't even look another person in the eyes because they're just that socially whatever. They just they just for whatever reason don't like other humans.
Yeah.
Become, basically flower children and love the world and want to talk to everybody.
A good example is Gamer Joe.
Yeah, Gamer Joe. Yep.
Not the actual Gamer Joe,
Yep.
but a different Gamer Joe. Yep. One of the Gamer Joes, we introduced him into role-playing. He was huge into Star Wars.
Yeah.
And he ended up becoming one of the pillars of the community.
Yeah.
And really came out of the shell.
Yeah, and it's...
Because he got something out of role-playing.
Yeah.
And out of that
loop.
That loop.
Yeah, no, that's what it comes down to. He found a loop that he liked, that worked for him, and it made him become somebody that he probably wanted to be, but didn't know how to get there.
Yeah, and he got out of it what he worked hard and got what he wanted out of it.
Yep, no, I think
it might not have been what he wanted initially out of it.
No, he didn't know that he wanted it, and all of a sudden, whoa, holy crack, I like this. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of that happen. I wish that we could push that out to the more... I know there's a few private schools that do that, and because one of my best friends looked into it all the time, and they're very successful private schools. The children who come out of those schools generally are always in... If you want to think success is a Fortune 500 company, then that's what they are. They're Fortune 500 children, or if they're actors, they're top tier actors, whatever.
I think one of the main rewards that you get out of like tabletop role playing is the critical thinking.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it teaches you to look at things from different perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not always just one answer to any solution.
If you just want to answer everything, you're not going to make it very far in role playing.
No, if you're in Gamer Joe, Gamer G, the guy sitting over there, if you're in one of his sessions, you don't critical think past some of the problems, you're just dead.
Yeah.
That's part of how it works. Like,
and this is kind of a cool thing, but sometimes the critical thinking is to not critically think.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just to do.
Sometimes it is just to go horfing into the fight.
Sometimes you need that barbarian to kick down the door and kill all the goblins. But yeah, back to the main point of gameplay loops. Try different things out. Try different games. I usually don't know if the loop's gonna really get me until about 10 hours into a game.
Right.
That's about my threshold.
Yeah. That's fair enough. I don't know if I'm probably a little less. I'll give up on a game pretty quick. The first few minutes are going to pretty much decide for me.
Yeah.
If I play a game and the first 8 minutes are just dialogue and intro to the world, I'm probably not going to finish the game. It sounds terrible. I like a game that gives you just enough to make you want to play more, but not so much that you're like, I know half the world already before I even get out of the character creation.
You don't want all the exposition.
I've played a few games that people just love that I can't get past the first 5 minutes of because it's just okay, well, I know the whole story now, so what's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously there probably is more story, but it felt anyway. The loop was closed by that point for me.
So, that's gameplay loops.
All right. Well, that'll be it then, I guess.
All right.
Until next time.
Bye.